Naruto as a show is about self-improvement, pushing yourself to the limits regardless of how you were born or how you were brought up. It's about taking something that might seem simple and working at it so hard that eventually it becomes complex and powerful. Now, we see this in a myriad of different ways throughout the duration of Naruto's run. We see Taijutsu go from simple punches and kicks to space-time bending, blood aura-wrapped, massive blows. We see Gentle Fist start as poking people in Tenketsu spots really fast and evolve into massive twirling twin lion fists that can destroy huge Otsutsuki constructs built out of Byakugan eyes over hundreds of years. And obviously, since this is an overarching theme of the show, the main character of the show was also gonna fall into this trope. While we see Naruto evolve from the child he was in a lot of different ways, nothing is a better physical representation of that than his Rasengan. But we've already ranked and explained every single Rasengan, but in that video I did say that we would be doing the rasenshuriken in a different video. Well, congratulations, you've made it to that video, because today we are ranking and explaining every single form of everybody's favorite throwable death, the rasenshuriken. Before we get to ranking or explaining anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And since we're talking about throwing, you guys would be throwing if you weren't following my other channel, The Weeb Commander, where instead of talking Naruto, I talk shows like Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, Bleach, One Piece, Fire Force, everything. So the rasenshuriken, considered one of the deadliest jutsus in the entirety of Naruto, simply in its base form. Achieved after Naruto figured out how to add wind release to his Rasengan and then add a shape transformation to said wind release. For the longest time, Naruto, much like his father before him, wanted to find a way to add an elemental release to the Rasengan. Upon mastering the ability to add wind release to the Rasengan by adding a shadow clone to the mix, Naruto created the wind release Rasengan. However, upon applying another shadow clone to the mix, Naruto figured out how to control the shape transformation of the wind release being added to the Rasengan and create the rasenshuriken. And like I said earlier, this is one of the deadliest jutsus in Naruto. Elemental wind release, when put under shape transformation, is one of the sharpest things in Naruto, which is why the rasenshuriken, upon hitting its mark, destroys things on a cellular level, which is why we've seen the rasenshuriken cut through things like Ten Tails' tails or the entirety of the God Tree. When it comes to cutting power, there's really nothing that compares. And the fact that today he doesn't need shadow clones to help him create a rasenshuriken, and that he can remotely control them from a distance, this is one of the scariest jutsus out there. Mind all that with the fact that upon making contact with the target, a rasenshuriken explodes into a flurry of even sharper wind release, making anything that it hits essentially meat funfetti. So what happens when you take all of this terrifyingness and upgrade it even further? Well, that was a question that Naruto asked himself 9 separate times. As like with everything else in Naruto, the rasenshuriken, even though it was already an upgrade of the Rasengan, needed to get upgraded even further. And while things like the Chidori and Gentle Fist got stronger through different kinds of shape transformations, Naruto's core personality trait of believing that more is always better really plays into the upgrading the rasenshuriken, as almost every single upgrade to the rasenshuriken is either making it bigger or adding something else to it. And ironically, the only exception to that rule is the first entry on our list. Coming in at number 9, we have the mini rasenshuriken. In a quite literal blink and you'll miss it moment, Naruto unveiled to us one of his first upgrades to the rasenshuriken. See, upon arriving on the battlefield for the 4th Great Shinobi World War after mastering his Jin Cloak version 1, Naruto is confronted by a massive white Zetsu slammed together. And for some reason, instead of using a regular rasenshuriken and deleting the entirety of the Frankenstein white Zetsus, Naruto instead elects to use a mini rasenshuriken. Now, the way that Naruto creates a mini rasenshuriken is that while in his Jin Cloak version, he creates 2 mini little chakra arms off of his finger. These tiny knuckle-length chakra arms then make a tiny little rasenshuriken that floats above Naruto's finger. Naruto can then throw that rasenshuriken by flicking his finger. And while this mini rasenshuriken isn't nearly as powerful as a regular rasenshuriken, it was still able to sever the leg of the white Zetsu Frankenstein-esque monster. And considering the fact that white Zetsus were said to be Jonin level, and this was about 40 of them stacked together, cutting through and destroying the leg of a beast like that is no small feat. Now, when would this ever be a practical thing to use? That's a really good question, because it's not like Naruto was out of chakra and had to use a smaller version of his rasenshuriken, because like 15 seconds after he uses this jutsu, he splits himself into 600 clones and goes to fight on every single single battlefield at once. So I guess if you're going for like a non-lethal subduing of someone, I guess the mini rasenshuriken would help. Or if possibly you want to sneak a rasenshuriken to hit somebody without it being so big and loud and boisterous. But it's not like it's Boruto's Rasengan, it's not invisible, because there's basically no reason to use it, and it's actually weaker than a regular rasenshuriken. It's last on the list. But let's move to moves that aren't weaker than the base form of the thing we're talking about and get to number 8. See, number 8 on our list is the repeated rasenshuriken, which is, and you're not gonna believe this, a rasenshuriken but twice. See, the problem with rasenshuriken in the beginning is that Naruto needed a couple of shadow clones just to create one. However, during the war arc, Naruto figured out how to make the rasenshuriken just by having his hand out, meaning he was not only controlling the flow of chakra into a rasengan and then adding wind release and using shape transformation, he was doing all of that simultaneously, and repeated rasenshuriken is when he does it in both hands. So considering the fact that there's now 2 rasenshuriken and not 1 rasenshuriken, of course it's gonna be stronger than a regular rasenshuriken. In fact, we saw Naruto use this move to cut the tails of the 10 tails. But considering the fact that it's just the rasenshuriken twice, it's not gonna be that high on this list. So let's get into real, actual upgrades for the rasenshuriken with number 7 on this list, the big ball rasenshuriken. See, the big ball rasenshuriken is exactly what it sounds like. It's a larger variation of the rasenshuriken. Essentially, by using 2 shadow clones instead of 1 shadow clone to add wind release to a rasengan, Naruto is able to make an even larger version of the rasenshuriken. This big ball rasenshuriken not only lights up the night sky when thrown, explosions caused by it can be seen from kilometers away. In fact, the impact of this big ball rasenshuriken was so substantial that it literally neutralized Madara long enough to be sealed. On top of temporarily stunning Madara long enough to get him sealed, it also destroyed 2 of Hashirama's wooden dragons. And considering the fact that this rasenshuriken was probably at least partially made with tail beast chakra, that's saying something. But like with most things with Naruto, big is never big enough. Which is why coming in at number 6, we have our ultra big ball rasenshuriken, which is absolutely a step up in terms of size. But this rasenshuriken is exactly what it sounds like with its title. It's a rasenshuriken roughly the size of Gamakichi, and its destructive power matches that. Though unfortunately, we only truly ever saw this ultra big ball rasenshuriken in filler, so we're not very sure of what it can accomplish. However, that is not the case for our next entry on the list, because coming in at number 5 is the Scorch Release rasenshuriken. Now, while the technical name for this rasenshuriken is, and I'm going to have to read it, Scorch Release Halo Hurricane Jet Black Arrow Style 0, because it's named by Minato and he's awful at naming jutsus, we're just going to refer to it as the Scorch Release rasenshuriken. See, the Scorch Release rasenshuriken is a bit weird because it's not actually Scorch Release. See, Scorch Release is a Kekkei Genkai specific to Pakura, and with this Kekkei Genkai, she was able to evaporate all the water within somebody's body, meaning that if any of her fireballs hit you, you would basically instantly become a mummy. It's a crazy Kekkei Genkai, but that Kekkei Genkai can simply be nullified with a little bit of water release. This Scorch Release cannot be. But that's mostly because this Scorch Release rasenshuriken isn't only made by one person. The Scorch Release rasenshuriken is created by Naruto and Sasuke working together. Essentially, Naruto uses his rasenshuriken and Sasuke uses Kagetsuchi. Kagetsuchi being Sasuke's ability to give shape transformation to his Amaterasu. If the wind to flame ratio is perfectly balanced, you get Scorch Release. Because in essence, this is what Scorch Release is anyways, wind and fire release. However, when we're talking about the combination of Naruto and Sasuke, here you are talking about wind release and flame release at their highest level of power. So in essence, instead of having a little fireball that turns everybody into a mummy, you get a rasenshuriken that can truck through anybody, and anybody it touches gets covered in Amaterasu. Combine this with the fact that Naruto can make the rasenshuriken bigger, and Sasuke can apply more Kagetsuchi to it because he has a Sharingan, and therefore perfectly understands the ratio of wind to flame release that should be in this shuriken, and you get one of the most terrifying tandem attacks in Naruto. Naruto and Sasuke with this ability were able to wipe out multiple 10-tail clones at once, because if the rasenshuriken doesn't kill you, even if it hits you a little bit, the Amaterasu flames will. This ability is essentially a battlefield buster. It could, if it needed to, be used to wipe out entire armies of shinobi. Fortunately for everybody though, it was only ever aimed at the 10-tails. And while obviously the scope of what this jutsu could accomplish is terrifying, we never really see it used in any crazy type feats. Like yes, it was able to destroy 10-tail clones and hurt the 10-tails, but at the same time, Regular old Amaterasu probably would have also hurt the Ten Tails. It was just kind of a vehicle to get the Amaterasu there. So putting this one this low on the list does feel kind of weird because once again, what this jutsu could accomplish in premise is terrifying, but all of the rasenshuriken below this on the list have just accomplished more. Whether that be because Naruto and Sasuke didn't have time to pull off this jutsu in these situations, or if because the jutsus beyond this jutsu are just more powerful, I honestly can't say. But I can really only scale an ability based off the feats we've seen from it, so that's why it's coming in at this relatively low spot. I'm putting that caveat right there though, because coming in at number 4 is Sage Art Lava Release Rasenshuriken. See, I would completely understand if you thought that Scorch Release was stronger than the Lava Release Rasenshuriken. I mean, when we're talking about a Rasenshuriken with fire added to it, I'd probably rather have Amaterasu than Lava Release, though I wouldn't want either on my skin, because even though the destructive power of the initial blow is probably the same in both circumstances, the Lava Release Rasenshuriken releases lava, while the Scorch Release releases Amaterasu. But we've just seen more from the Lava Release Rasenshuriken. Well, all we basically saw from Scorch Release is that it hurt the Ten Tails. The Lava Release Rasenshuriken literally cut the Divine Tree in half. And mind you, the Divine Tree or the God Tree or the Chakra Tree, whatever you want to call it, is the Ten Tails. So while in premise a Scorch Release Rasenshuriken should be more powerful than a Lava Release Rasenshuriken, the Scorch Release Rasenshuriken kind of just blew up on the Ten Tails and left some Amaterasu there. Not fun for the Ten Tails, but the Lava Release Rasenshuriken technically cut the Ten Tails in half. In fact, the Lava Release Rasenshuriken was so powerful that after cutting the tree in half, Madara had to absorb it because otherwise it would have died. Like, one Rasenshuriken was kind of a hindrance when the Ten Tails was being held down by Hashirama's gates, and the other almost killed it. So listen, I don't make the rules, I just enforce them. But that does make what I'm about to say a bit difficult. See, I think we can all agree that cutting the Ten Tails in half is arguably one of the most impressive things you can do with a Rasenshuriken.
So Nick, then why is the Lava Release Rasenshuriken at number 4?
Well, that's because putting it above any of these other entries on the list would just feel wrong. Most specifically, the next entry on our list, the Tailed Beast Ball Rasenshuriken. Now, this is kind of an apples to orange moment, because we have seen incredibly massive feats from the Tailed Beast Ball Rasenshuriken. It was able to destroy multiple Chibuka Tensei meteors in one go. You know, those meteors that basically almost killed the entirety of the allied shinobi forces in the beginning of the war? The thing it took Gaara, Inoki, and a ton of other people to stop? Yes, the Tailed Beast Ball Rasenshuriken was able to destroy like 4 or 5 of those simultaneously. Is that a more impressive feat than cutting the Ten Tails tree form in half? Genuinely, I do not know. The reason though, however, I am putting this above the Lava Release Rasenshuriken is the way a Tailed Beast Ball Rasenshuriken is made. Naruto takes one of his True Seeker orbs, because this happens after Hagoromo gives him the Sage of Six Paths chakra, and converts that True Seeker orb, which is already a Kekemora, meaning it's made of the 5 elemental releases Yin and Yang, and the True Seeker orbs by themselves are one of the strongest jutsus on Earth. He then covers that True Seeker orb in a Tailed Beast Bomb, meaning that on top of having 7 elemental releases, it is also now covered in an 8-to-2 ratio of negative and positive chakra. And then what does Naruto do after that? Well, he applies more wind release to it, gives it a shape transformation, and makes it throwable. And since Naruto has 6 True Seeker orbs, he can do this 6 times in a row, or 6 times at once. Though in the anime, it's shown that he's using it 7 times at once, which is impossible because he only has 6 True Seeker orbs. Kind of a cool little caveat there. But mind you, only one of these Rasenshuriken was able to destroy 4 or 5 meteors at once. Expand that to 6 times and you have a terrifying jutsu.
So Nick, the thing that can destroy multiple of one of the strongest jutsus in the entirety of Naruto in one go, and Naruto can make 6 of them at a time, is not the strongest thing?
No, it's actually 3rd. But it's gonna make sense in a second, because coming in at number 2 is Six Paths Ultra Big Ball Rasenshuriken. Listen, if there are 6 paths in the title, it's gonna be top 3, possibly top 2. This applies to Naruto, Sasuke, Kakashi, anybody who's ever gotten 6-path power. Any jutsu they use is one of the strongest in the show. Naruto is only able to use this technique while in 6 paths mode and while fully transformed into Kurama, but specifically the Ashura version of Kurama. What do I mean by that? To use this technique, Naruto not only has to be fully transformed into Kurama, he has to make 2 complete shadow clones of Kurama's transformation, meaning Naruto now has 3 completely transformed Kuramas. He then has to smash these 3 Kuramas together to make one Mega Kurama. And this Mega Kurama not only has 3 heads, it also has 6 arms. As to whether or not it has 27 tails, that has never been confirmed. Naruto then, in this 6-armed mega construct that somehow he knew how to create, on one side creates a 6 paths ultra big ball rasenshuriken, and on the other side creates a tailed beast ball rasenshuriken. And since this is a 6 paths technique, both of these rasenshuriken are heavily imbued with senjutsu chakra, implying that on top of the keke mora, the positive and negative chakra, the shape transformation, they also have senjutsu chakra, which is why these rasenshuriken were able to counter an all 9 tailed beast boosted Indra's arrow. It, for all intents and purposes, is Naruto's strongest technique, because it was used to counter Sasuke's strongest technique. So why, oh why, would it be at number 2? I mean, this is the biggest of the bad. It's used in the Valley of the End. This technique wasn't even used on Kaguya, it was used on Sasuke. And we all know the later a technique shows up, the stronger it is. That's just anime rules. And once again, I completely understand if you disagree with me here, but there's just some information I know about our last jutsu on the list here that means I really can't put it below anything else. Because coming in at number 1, we have Sage Art Super Tailed Beast rasenshuriken. This rasenshuriken is referred to as Naruto's ultimate technique, even though like 12 episodes later, obviously he fused 3 versions of Kurama together to make a literal Buddhist god that threw 2 incredibly powerful rasenshuriken at Sasuke. This technique was referred to as Naruto's ultimate technique. So why would this be Naruto's ultimate technique? Well, because this technique shows Naruto having 8 shadow clones and himself using 9 rasenshuriken. And each single one of these rasenshuriken is imbued with the chakra of one of the tailed beasts. Meaning this technique has Naruto using the lava release, magnet release, steam release, every kind of release rasenshuriken all at once. It is essentially a 10 tails rasenshuriken. The rasenshuriken for Shukaku is magnet release. The rasenshuriken for Matatabi is created out of blue flames. Isoba's rasenshuriken is created out of water. Son Goku's rasenshuriken is obviously the lava release rasenshuriken. Kokyo's rasenshuriken appears to be emitting steam, implying that it has steam release. Saiken's rasenshuriken appears to be made out of corrosive gas. Chomei's rasenshuriken is created out of scale powder, which is a powder that when released in high quantities can blind opponents. Gyuki's rasenshuriken is created out of ink, and Kurama's rasenshuriken is just a regular rasenshuriken. He's been using Kurama's chakra to make every rasenshuriken we've ever seen. And I know what you're saying. You're sitting in your seat right now and you're saying,
well, Nick, that just sounds like the lava release rasenshuriken times 9, roughly.
And that might just be it. But once again, if we take a step back and we look at what the lava release rasenshuriken was able to accomplish, quite literally cutting the 10 tails in half, timesing that by 9 is a terrifying consequence. But that's not even really why I'm putting this ability at number 1. Because if we're being honest, these 9 rasenshuriken are all thrown at Kaguya, and it doesn't even really damage her. The real reason that these rasenshuriken do damage to Kaguya is because the tailed beast chakra within them resonates with the tailed beast chakra in Kaguya. And because his tailed beast chakra is resonating with Kaguya's tailed beast chakra, it stops her from using her humanoid form. And listen, I'm not gonna sit here and say that the 6 paths ultra big ball rasenshuriken would have actually damaged Kaguya, because it could have, we don't know. The real, genuine reason I'm putting this at the top of the list is because in Naruto's data book, this jutsu is described as the most marvelous ninjutsu ever created. And considering the fact that these rasenshuriken contain at leist 3 different types of Kekkei Genkai and at least 9 different chakra signatures from the tailed beasts, and it is openly and canonically considered the most marvelous ninjutsu ever created, even though I believe in my heart of hearts that there's a possibility that the 6 paths ultra big ball rasenshuriken could be stronger than this technique, there's too much evidence for the super tailed beast rasenshuriken barrage. So while I am sitting here and saying that the super tailed beast rasenshuriken barrage is the strongest of all the rasenshuriken, if you believe that my 1 and 2 should be switched, I genuinely could not fault you. But what do you guys think? Do you agree with my list? Would you switch my 1 and my 2? Would you switch my 4 and my 5? Hit me in the comments below and tell me your opinions and why you guys are down there. Please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. What are we gonna rank and explain next? Gentle fist techniques?